So the first thing that I did was to pitch up the vocals and the melodic elements in the track by 1 note. I seem to investigate with my tracks that I'm currently working on whether they sound better in different keys, etc. So this one to me sounds much better pitched up. And obviously it wouldn't be a proper remix, DJ friendly as well, if it didn't have the customary first 16 bars of kick and claps and that kind of stuff. So this is what the first few parts of the song is like, and then the vocals come in.
I wake up in the morning and I see the sunshine. Will you be the one to show me a sign? All I do is think to myself.
The one thing I wanted to change was in the first part of the song, the original song, I felt like the chords were a little bit cheesy. So I kept the first intro chords the same, but as soon as the transition started to the build up, I changed the chords to what they were in the second half of the drop in the original song. This is where it gets a little bit messy for a bystander. But to me it makes sense. I made the second half of the song in the original song, and the second half was a different chord progression and it sounded a lot different to the first half. But now I wanted this to sound very cohesive and similar, so I moved the chords over from here all the way over to here, and basically played around with that.
I've never felt so good. Never felt so
And yeah, you can hear the transition in the chords if I just play you that now. Another thing that I changed was the bass line. I felt like the bass line was pretty much non-existent because I didn't know how to make a bass line, if I'm honest with you, when I first started. And with less than like 6 months, less than that, probably like 3 months experience in producing music in Logic, I had no idea how to make a bass line. So in the original version, the bass lines are muddy and the kick, you can't really hear and distinguish the elements. Whereas in this, you should be able to hear that it's mixed as good as I can get. In a year's time, I'll probably look at this and think, yeah, I could have improved this and that. But as at the moment, this is probably the best that I could do. I'm sure I'll improve, but here's the bass line. So we've got an 808 in there as well. Let's get rid of the kick. We've got an 808, we've got like a gritty bass that I made in Silent, and a couple of presets that I tinkered and made my own. The 808 really is an interesting sound, but I solo that for you now. Normally I wouldn't put an 808 in a track like this, but I felt like it added a little bit of spice, a little bit of a different element to the track. And yeah, I just like the style. After the first drop, you know how that goes. Obviously you bring in some elements in the second half of the drop that you didn't have, so like the ARP here. And we've also got a little bit of variation on things like hi-hats, claps, toppers. It just gets more complex as you go down to my bottom part of the project. So there's a lot of layers in here. I think there's 100 layers in this, 100 and something layers in this project, so it's pretty hefty, but not the biggest. But yeah, after the first drop, this is what we have in terms of the chords. The chords change again. I actually quite like the chords in the original song. Again, I just wanted to make this remix a little bit more different and have a little bit of variation within the rhythm. So I will solo the chords, and this is what they sound like. So it's very jumpy, very not moody as such, but just a little bit different to what they were originally. I feel like this helps bring the track forward a bit as well. You can definitely hear that cutting through in the mix. Also, almost forgot about this. I don't know how I forgot about this, because this to me is the best part of the track, but both build-ups before the drop I completely redesigned from the ground up. In the first song they feel quite empty. In this version I wanted to go all in and really channel the vibe that I wanted and the excitement to come So obviously we've got the build up, but this is before the second drop in the second half of the song. This is what it sounds like. So there's a lot to unpack here, but in short, basically I added a lot of claps that I put very close together and made them, automated them. There's a lot of stuff going on here, I think. I EQ'd them, made the EQ, automated the reverb and the volume and stuff. There's a lot going on there, but basically there's claps that are just very close together and they're filtering up and getting more prominent as you get through the build up. Also had a couple of, one of my most favorite ever loops is this loop on Logic, sounds like this. Really like that loop. Obviously I had to EQ it and change it quite a bit because it has a lot of low end that you don't want, that muddies up the mix a bit. And I added in, kept the bass line in, so the bass line is in there, just introducing some of the elements before the drop, and that adds some spice in there. And I like the way that it sounds. That's essentially it. I wanted the build up to be one of the most epic parts of the song. Obviously the drop needs to be the main focus, but the build up needs to get you excited and you're like, oh, this is different. And as soon as I played this to someone that hasn't heard this version before, they're like, oh, what have you done to this part of the song? So I don't know what the reception is going to be like to that, but hopefully you can understand why I did that. And I feel like it's a much more exciting build up than the original song, which is ultimately the aim of the game. Something else that I added in, which is a very small element actually, but I feel like really pushes the track forward a lot in a much bigger way than it actually is the reverse that I have going into many parts of the song, which sounds like this. And you might be able to hear it, you might not be able to hear it. If you're listening closely, you should hear it. That just adds character to the song, and it introduces the lead sounds before the leads even come in. So if you solo the leads and this sound, it just introduces it before it gets too messy. Same with before the drop, that comes in as well. Without it, it just doesn't sound as good. It's a bit of a shock when it comes in without a reverse, just to introduce the sound to the listener. Adds a bit of cohesiveness, and that's basically why I put it in, and I think it sounds quite nice as well. Something else that I did with the arrangement, which you probably should have heard, and if you haven't heard this, then you obviously haven't heard the original. But when the second half of the song and it gets to the build up and the drop, normally you would expect this part of the song for there to be a big, this is where the kick comes in, the bass, the leads, chords, everything comes together. But I thought this would be quite nice to play live if I eventually do start playing live. Once I get better at DJing, this builds a bit of tension, there's no kick, and all of a sudden the fill comes in and everything comes in at the same time. The bass is there, the gritty bass, the kick, the snares, everything's panning, the leads fill out the sound. That was my plan, just to extend the drop even a little bit more. And it might be such a small thing in the arrangement, but I feel like it just pushes the track forward and makes it sound much, much better than the original. I'm really happy with the way that this is sounding compared to the original track. And yeah, I just like, this is a much better production than the first track, if that makes sense. And hopefully you should be able to hear it. This has been a work in progress for such a long time that I've kind of forgotten how the original sounded. So I would always listen to this in the car and test it out and see, is this the right key? Is this, do I want this, these elements here and there? But honestly, I'm super happy with how it sounds. And yeah, there's obviously going to be areas which I can improve. I'm aware that the bass line is the biggest improvement in this song, but also the key change is important. And replacing the kick and making sure the kick is punchier and having all these elements together. The last track, the original version of this track, didn't really have a punchy kick. The snares and everything was very muddy. It didn't quite match up. Didn't have as many reverses. It wasn't in the same key. So many things, so many small elements. It might not seem like this is a brand new song, but it is. I basically had to rebuild this song from scratch and channel my knowledge that I've learned over the last 18 months or 2 years of doing this. And it felt right to do it with this song because this was the first proper song that I worked on, obviously with Brooke. And as a little bonus, this part of the project normally is where I just play around, and normally this is where I keep all my crap in the project. I put it to the right hand side if I'm playing around with something that I don't necessarily want to finish. I always leave it on the right hand side. I'm not quite sure, oh, I do remember what this is. This is like a little build up of alternative drop. Again, this is something that I just played around with. It works, but it obviously hasn't had as much attention as the rest of the song. And this is like one of the alternative drops that I had for Never Felt So Good. Too wet is what I'm hearing already. There you go, and that was one of the alternative versions that it might not see the light of day, but at least you've heard it on this video, a little sneak peek for you. But essentially, that was the track. It's my first ever remix of my own song, and yeah, I've just produced it in a way that I want to make music that sounds good and it means something. Basically, I feel like this is a good time to release this song. Obviously, we've had such a bad couple of years around the world with the pandemic and COVID, and it's been a terrible time for so many people. I'm definitely not saying that this song is going to solve anyone's problems or woes in their life, but if you can listen to this song, have a good time, dance and sing, and forget about your worries for a minute, then essentially if one person does that, then that's mission accomplished for me. So that's why I think it's a good time to release the song, as hopefully now we are over the very worst of COVID and we can move forwards and look forward to better times. So that's the track. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I read every single one. Thank you so much for almost 10,000 views on the Can't Live music video. I'll put a little snippet or a little card up here so you can see. But essentially, that's all from me today. Go and stream this remix, add it to your playlist, tag me on your stories on Instagram, Facebook, on TikTok, whatever you want, Twitter, wherever you consume your social media. Tag me of you listening to it, add it to your playlists, and I'll see you very soon for new music, which I'm constantly working on. And honestly, I can't wait to show you what I've been working on. Maybe a live stream very soon. Anyway, thanks for watching. Ciao.